During a career that spanned more than 4 decades, Gordon Allport made personality an academically respectable topic. The formal and systematic study of personality was not recognized by the psychology establishment until Allport published Personality, a Psychological Interpretation, in 1937. The book was an immediate success and became a classic in the study of personality. Allport helped bring personality into the mainstream, and he formulated a theory of personality in which traits play a prominent role. Allport challenged Freud's psychoanalysis on several points. First, Allport did not accept the notion that unconscious forces dominate the personality of normal, mature adults. He argued that emotionally healthy people function rationally and consciously, aware and in control of many of the forces that motivate them. According to Allport, the unconscious is important only in the behavior of neurotic or disturbed people. Second, with regard to historical determinism, the importance of the past in determining the present, Allport said that we are not prisoners of childhood conflicts and past experiences, as Freud believed. Instead, we are guided more by the present and by our view of the future. Thirdly, Allport opposed collecting data from abnormal personalities. Whereas Freud saw a continuum between the normal and abnormal, Allport saw a clear distinction. To Allport, the abnormal personality functioned at an infantile level. The only proper way to study personality, he believed, was to collect data from emotionally healthy adults. Other populations, such as neurotics, children, and animals, should not be compared with normal adults. No functional similarity in personality existed between child and adult, abnormal and normal, or animal and human, as far as he was concerned. For this course, it is important to remember that the distinguishing feature of Allport's theory is his emphasis on the uniqueness of personality as defined by each person's traits. He emphasized the uniqueness of the individual. He opposed the traditional scientific emphasis on forming general constructs or laws to be applied universally. He argued that personality is not general or universal, but is particular and specific to the individual. He called the study of the individual morphogenic science and contrasted it with nomothetic methods used by most other psychologists. However, Allport was eclectic in his approach and accepted many of the ideas of other therapists, so a broad, comprehensive theory is preferable to a narrow, specific theory. Gordon Willard Allport was born on November 11, 1897, in Montezuma, Indiana, the son of a physician and former schoolteacher. As a 22-year-old student, Gordon Allport had a short but pertinent visit with Freud in Vienna, a meeting that changed Allport's life and altered the course of personality psychology in the United States. He received an undergraduate degree with a major in philosophy and economics and a PhD from Harvard. Allport then spent 2 years studying under some of the greatest German psychologists, but he returned from Europe to teach at Harvard. 2 years later, he took a position at Dartmouth, but after 4 years at Dartmouth, he returned to Harvard and remained there for the rest of his professional career. He was president of the American Psychological Association in 1939 and died in 1967 of lung cancer. Answers to 3 questions reveal Allport's view of personality theory. First, what is personality? 2, what is the role of conscious motivation in personality theory? And 3, what are the characteristics of the psychologically healthy person? First, what is personality? Allport defined personality as the dynamic organization within the individual of those psychophysical systems that determine his unique adjustments to his environment. This definition includes both physical and psychological properties. Also, personality not only is something, but it does something. That is, it includes both behavior and thinking, and it includes both overt and covert thoughts. More than any other personality theorist, Allport recognized the importance of conscious motivation. The role of conscious motivation, as he saw it, was that healthy adults are aware of what and why they are acting the way they do. and he believed in accepting self-reports at face value rather than seeing them as an expression of an unconscious motive. He did concede that some motivation is driven by hidden impulses and sublimated drives, and most compulsive behaviors originate in childhood. Allport considered personality to be discrete or discontinuous. Not only is each person distinct from all others, but each adult is also divorced from his or her past. He found no continuum of personality between childhood and adulthood. Primitive biological urges and reflexes drive infant behavior, whereas adult functioning is more psychological in nature. In a sense, there are two personalities, one for childhood and one for adulthood. The adult personality is not constrained by childhood experiences. What are the characteristics of the psychologically healthy person? That was a question that Allport explored. A few general assumptions are required to understand Allport's conception of the mature personality. First, psychologically mature people are characterized by proactive behavior. That is, they not only react to external stimuli, but they are capable of consciously acting on their environment in new and innovative ways and causing their environment to react to them. Several years before Maslow conceptualized the self-actualizing personality, Allport listed 6 criteria for psychological health: extension of the sense of self, warm relating of self to others, emotional security or self-acceptance, realistic perception of the environment, insight and humor, and finally, a unifying philosophy of life. Allport carefully distinguished between common traits and individual traits. He referred to individual traits as personal dispositions. Common traits are general characteristics held in common by many people. Personal dispositions are of even greater importance because they permit researchers to study a single individual. Allport defined a personal disposition as, quote, a generalized neuropsychic structure peculiar to the individual with the capacity to render many stimuli functionally equivalent and to initiate and guide consistent forms of adaptive and stylistic behavior, unquote. Basically, what he was saying was that personal dispositions are consistent across time and context. He recognized 3 overlapping levels of personal dispositions, the most general of which are cardinal dispositions that are so obvious and dominating that they cannot be hidden from other people. Few people have cardinal dispositions, but everyone has several central dispositions, which include the 5 to 10 most outstanding characteristics around which a person's life focuses. Less conspicuous, but far greater in number than central dispositions, are secondary dispositions. In addition, everyone has a great number of secondary dispositions, which are less reliable and less conspicuous than central traits. All personal dispositions are dynamic in the sense that they have motivational power. Nevertheless, some are much more strongly felt than others. Allport called these intensely experienced dispositions motivational dispositions. Unlike Maslow, who drew a clear line between coping and expressive behaviors, Allport saw no distinct division between motivational and stylistic personal dispositions. Although some dispositions are clearly stylistic, others are obviously based on a strongly felt need and thus are motivational. Allport used the term proprium to refer to all those behaviors and characteristics that people regard as warm, central, and important in their lives. The proprium is not the whole personality, because many characteristics and behaviors of a person are not warm and central. Rather, they exist on the periphery of personality. These non-propriate behaviors are as follows: basic drives and needs that are ordinarily met and satisfied without much difficulty. Tribal and cultural customs, such as wearing clothes, saying hello to people, and driving on the right side of the road. And habitual behaviors, such as smoking or brushing one's teeth, that are performed automatically and are not crucial to the person's sense of self. To Allport, people not only react to their environment, but they also shape their environment and cause it to react to them. Psychoanalysis and the various learning theories are basically homeostatic or reactive theories because they see people as being motivated primarily by needs to reduce tension and to return to a state of equilibrium. An adequate theory of personality, Allport contended, must allow for proactive behavior. His proactive approach emphasized that people purposefully act on their environment in a way that fosters growth toward psychological health. The concept of functional autonomy represents Allport's most distinctive and, at the time, most controversial postulate. It holds that some, but not all, human motives are functionally independent from the original motive responsible for a particular behavior. Allport defined functional autonomy as any acquired system of motivation in which the tensions involved are not of the same kind as the antecedent tensions from which the acquired system developed. In other words, what begins as one motive may grow into a new one that is historically continuous with the original, but functionally autonomous from it. I'll look at some examples in just a moment. The more elementary of the two levels of functional autonomy is perseverative functional autonomy. Allport borrowed this term from the word perseveration, which is the tendency of an impression to leave an influence on subsequent experience. The master system of motivation that confers unity on personality is propriate functional autonomy, which refers to self-sustaining motives that are related to the proprium. Workmanship is a good example of functional autonomy. A good workman feels compelled to do clean-cut, precise jobs, even though his security or the praise of others no longer depends on such high standards. Workmanship is not an instinct, but this motivation can take a firm hold on a person. Consider a businessman, long since secure economically, who may work himself into ill health for the sake of carrying on his plans. Or consider someone who has adapted to an active, energetic life in the city, who is suddenly permanently stranded on a lonely desert island. All of these individuals may try to continue a busy, frenzied existence, even though reason and health demand a simpler life. Allport strongly felt that psychologists should develop and use research methods that study the individual rather than groups. Early in his writings, Allport distinguished between two scientific approaches: the nomothetic, which seeks general laws, and the idiographic, which refers to that which is peculiar to a single case. Allport preferred morphogenic science, the study of idiographic information, or that which is related to the individual case. Both idiographic and morphogenic pertain to the individual, but idiographic does not suggest structure or pattern. In the late 1930s, Gordon and Ada Allport became acquainted with diaries written by a woman they called Marion Taylor. These diaries, along with descriptions of Marion Taylor by her mother, younger sister, favorite teacher, friends, and a neighbor, provided the Allports with a large quantity of material that could be studied using morphogenic methods. However, the Allports never published this material. The Allports did publish a second case study, that of Jenny Masterson, whose son had been Gordon Allport's college roommate. During the last years of her life, Jenny wrote a series of 301 letters to Gordon and Ada Allport, although Allport tried to hide the identity of the young couple who had received these letters. Two of Gordon Allport's students used a personal structure analysis and factor analysis, respectively. Allport used a common sense approach to discern Jenny's personality structure as revealed by her letters. All three approaches yielded similar results, which suggest that morphogenic studies can be reliable. More than any other personality theorist, Gordon Allport maintained a lifelong active interest in the scientific study of religion and published 6 lectures on the subject. Allport believed that a deep religious commitment was a mark of a mature person, But he also saw that many regular churchgoers did not have a mature religious orientation and were capable of deep racial and social prejudice. This insight led Allport to develop and use the religious orientation scale to assess both an intrinsic orientation and an extrinsic orientation toward religion. Allport and Michael Ross found that people with an extrinsic orientation toward religion tend to be quite prejudiced, whereas those with an intrinsic orientation tend to be low in racial and social prejudice. Recent research has found a consistent relationship between religious involvement and health. Attending church regularly tends to be associated with feeling better and living longer. Kevin Masters and his colleagues studied religious orientation and cardiovascular health. They found that, as they predicted, those with an intrinsic religious orientation did not have the same increases of blood pressure in reaction to moderate stress as those with an extrinsic orientation did. These results demonstrated that an intrinsic religious orientation serves as a buffer against the stressors of everyday life. Allport based his theory of personality more on philosophical speculation and common sense than on scientific studies. As a consequence, his theory rates low on its ability to organize psychological data and to be falsified. It is difficult to translate Allport's concepts into specific terms and propositions suitable for study by the experimental method. For example, how do we observe functional autonomy? And how can we manipulate this concept to test its effects? Criticisms have been leveled against the concept of functional autonomy. Allport did not make clear how an original motive is transformed into an autonomous one. For example, once a person is financially secure, by what process is the motive to work hard for financial gain altered to become a motive to continue to work hard for the sake of the task itself? In conclusion, we'll look at Allport's concept of humanity. Allport saw people as thinking, proactive, purposeful beings who are generally aware of what they are doing and why. On the 6 dimensions for a concept of humanity, he rates higher than any other theorist on conscious influences and on the uniqueness of the individual. Allport adopted a limited freedom approach. His view of humanity is more teleological than causal. He also held an optimistic view of humanity, maintaining that people have at least limited freedom. While the growth of personality always takes place within a social setting, Allport placed only moderate emphasis on social factors. To support his emphasis on the uniqueness of the individual personality, Allport stated that we reflect both our heredity and our environment. Heredity provides the personality with the raw materials, if you will, such as physique, intelligence, and temperament, that may then be shaped, expanded, or limited by the conditions of our environment. In this way, Allport invokes both personal and situational variables to indicate the importance of both genetics and learning. Allport believed that our genetic endowment interacts with our social environment, and no two people, not even siblings brought up in the same house, have precisely the same environment. The inevitable result is a unique personality. Allport's emphasis on the uniqueness of personality has been challenged because his position focuses so exclusively on the individual that it is impossible to generalize from one person to another. Many psychologists find it difficult to accept Allport's proposed discontinuity between child and adult, animal and human, normal and abnormal. They point out that research on the behavior of children, animals, and emotionally disturbed subjects has yielded considerable knowledge about the functioning of the normal, emotionally healthy adult.